Welcome everyone to another Embrace Fertility podcast / YouTube channel. Today I have the lovely Jenni June joining me. So a little bit about her. She's a pregnancy loss and fertility coach, a Reiki practitioner, and a meditation instructor. She supports those who've experienced an invisible loss, be that a pregnancy or the dream of having a child due to infertility. Guiding her community through all stages of the healing journey, she holds a loving space for them, allowing them to discover whole body healing, learn how to release fear and anxiety through mindfulness and the help of Reiki. When working with Jenni, her clients experience high levels of confidence, inspiration, growth, and move to the next stage of life with a fierce love for themselves and a connection to their body after loss. So I saw Jenni's post on Instagram. I think it was only about a week ago, and every single post was just so beautiful and from the heart. And so just the joy of Instagram. Sent her a quick message, said, would you like to come and play on my podcast? And she said yes. So here she is. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you for that kind welcome, Naomi. That was wonderful. And yes, I loved when you reached out on Instagram. I think that's the power of social media, right? Is we can connect from all the way across the world and like instantly be friends. So
fantastic. So today we're doing our usual thing, having a chat, but we have a lovely little list of questions to keep us a little bit focused, because as you know, I do like to chat, and sometimes these podcasts could just go on for days, because the people I invite on are so passionate about supporting you ladies and lads. So Jenni, would you like to give us a little bit of your history, your story, and why you decided to train in the therapist that you have trained in?
yes, absolutely. So I'll give you the quick version because it can be a little long. So this has been about 5 years in the making. My husband and I had been married for quite a while, about 6 years, and we'd put off like having a family because we thought we weren't quite, adult enough yet. So we weren't established adults. So we kept putting it off until it was the right time, which, as you know, there's never a right time. But finally we decided, okay, maybe it could sort of be the right time. So let's just give it a go. And we had a lot of fun trying to get pregnant and success. I got pregnant on our first month of like trying. And we were thrilled because we thought it would take forever. And it was, we were high level of excitement. And then that quickly fell down because I unfortunately had an ectopic pregnancy that first round. And so that is where the embryo implants in your fallopian tube. So it doesn't travel to the uterus. It got stopped. And so through a very traumatic experience of, going to the doctor like every other day to try to figure out what was going on. They finally said, okay, we think you're having an ectopic, but we want to make sure, so we're going to send you to the ER. And so I got sent to the ER at like midnight one night. And that we thought was, okay, could it be a normal pregnancy and maybe it's just wrong, or could I be miscarrying? And so there were a lot of questions at that time. And ultimately, through a lot of tests and ultrasounds, the doctors at the emergency room decided, yeah, you're having an ectopic, and not only that, but we think your tube is rupturing and we need to rush you into emergency surgery. So it was super traumatic. And you go from the high of like, oh my God, we're pregnant, to, oh, I'm having a lot of bleeding, what's going on, to, oh my God, I'm in intense pain. And all of a sudden I'm being rushed into emergency surgery. And so that was in 2016, I believe. November of 2016. And so from there, they told me they did have to remove my right fallopian tube. And they told me, the doctor said like, oh, you should be able to get pregnant just fine with, the one tube that you have left. We want you to try naturally for a year. And I was like, okay. And so in that year, I was grieving a lot. I was without a tube, but yet they told me I would be okay. But yet I really wanted to get my other tube tested just because, gosh, but my doctors who I trusted, there are advocates, or, what we think they are, right? They're kind of the expert in the field. So you trust them. And so I waited a year, and that year was very hard. We weren't getting pregnant. My body was like all over the place, girlfriend. It was like, I would go for like 45-day cycles sometimes. Sometimes I'd have 15-day cycles. It was insane. And anyway, I told you I'd give you the short version. I'm giving you the long version, but
No, carry on. This is just so, it's so important for us to share these stories, and for people to hear this, because unless we've had a close friend who's gone through this, we just have no idea, do we? So continue.
yeah, absolutely. And I love sharing our stories, because it is so important. So I'll give you the middle version, I suppose. So after that year, we hadn't gotten pregnant. I went to my OBGYN, and I said, look, like I really want to have a child, and I'm not getting pregnant. Like, what do I do? And at that point she was like, okay, we're just going to send you to the fertility doctor at this point. And so she referred me over, and I had told them what was going on, and I had an ectopic last year. I haven't gotten pregnant since, and that my body's been like all over the place. And they were like, okay, well, we immediately need to test your other tube. And so I did like a workup, some blood work and things like that. Everything was looking okay. I went in for my HCG test, which is where they actually put fluid through your tube to make sure it is flowing right. And they do a pregnancy test before that, just to make sure, that they're not ruining a pregnancy, And so I was like, okay. So I took my pregnancy test. I'm like waiting on the table, and a couple other nurses come over, and they're like gathering at the station and whispering and da 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 da. And I'm like, can I just get this done? Cause I'm like naked on the table in like those little like paper, those like paper dresses. And I'm just thinking they're like chit chatting, and they come over and they're like, well, your pregnancy test is positive. And so congratulations. And we're not doing the test today. And I was like,
Whoa,
what?
mind fuck.
Total. It was like, what? And I'm like, naked on the table, like, well, could it be lying? Like, could it be false? And they're like, no, we did it twice, and they're the best test that you can possibly get. And so we want you to go in, and you're going to skip the test today. You're going to go into the doctor tomorrow, and they'll do like essentially like a workup of pregnancy from here on. And so that was also my birthday, where I was off on my birthday. So I scheduled the appointment just to like get it over with. And so that all happened on my birthday. So I called my husband afterwards, and he was like, how'd the test go? And I was like, well, actually, I didn't get the test. Like, side note, didn't happen because we're pregnant. And at that point, there was not a lot of excitement. There was like a little hum, maybe a little energy, but for the most part, it was like, what the F, and could this be real? And is something terrible going to happen again? Which I think is what a lot of us who have gone through a loss before and have a pregnancy again think. And unfortunately, my worst nightmare did happen this time, because I had another ectopic pregnancy. So my little tube ended up being blocked as well on the left side, and the egg could not get through into the uterus. And this time I was working with my fertility doctor throughout the whole experience. And we did like really early ultrasounds, and there was nothing in the uterine womb. There was no sac space. And so she thought, well, you could be early or maybe not. And so she was really hoping, I was hoping, we were all like hoping that this was going to be a normal pregnancy. But we waited a little too long, and this time my tube did end up rupturing. So I was at work. I was leaving work for the day. You leave work for the day, and you're like, go to the bathroom right before you leave, right? And so I did that. And as I was going to the bathroom, I was like, in like immediate pain of like something terrible has happened. And it was like, towards the end of the day. So I remember walking out of my office and on the phone with my doctor, like, I'm in the most crazy pain. I can barely walk to my car. I think I'm going to the ER because I think this is happening again. And the wonderful nurse stayed on the phone with me as I drove the 20 minutes to the ER. I drove myself because like there was nobody else there, and checked myself in. And then my husband like quickly left work and came and joined me. And sure enough, this it happened again. And it was like this crazy Groundhog Day moment where I was, in the same ER and doing the same things, and then but in a more pain because my tube had ruptured. And so they were like shooting me up with morphine because I was like hurting so badly. And had to go under emergency surgery again. They couldn't save my tube. They did try, but it had ruptured. It was already gone. I think the scariest part of this is I lost the two babies that I so desperately wanted. But I was also in a point where like I could have lost my life as well because I could have ruptured or I could have hemorrhaged. And so it was very traumatic. My husband was, left sitting in the waiting room while I was in surgery, and his mind was racing, like, what if I do lose my wife? And so it was traumatic for both of us in different ways. And as
the guys are like sat obviously thinking like he's not just losing your baby, might lose you as well. And it's like it's like he's got that kind of double loss, and like not being like, whereas you're experiencing, but I think sometimes for them it's like it's so bad as well because they are just like, I can't do anything, they're just waiting.
Yeah, and he gets his stress manifests physically for him, so like he gets physically sick when he's really stressed.
Yeah.
And so we laugh now, but it wasn't funny at the time. But like he was literally like, he would have to go into the hospital bathroom to throw up because he was just so like out of his mind worried. And I did find I had amazing doctors. And so they took really, really good care of me. And as I woke up from anesthesia the second time, they asked me if I wanted to see my tube, which held, my little baby. And I was so high on drugs that it is a very like blurry memory in my my mind. But they, held up my little tube, and I just remember putting my finger out and touching it and just saying I love you, and get a little teary-eyed saying that. But it was a very special moment and something that I'm glad occurred, because I get to hold space for that baby who I didn't get to hold, but had a connection with from the very moment I found out I was pregnant, both times. And so that's my loss experience. My recovery after my second pregnancy, I had finally decided to open up and share with people. My first one I kept very private, only, close family knew. But the second one, it was something about losing both of my fallopian tubes that something shifted within me. And I felt like I can't keep it a secret because there are other women out there who are sitting here, in the dark with their curtains closed, eating chocolate pudding like I was doing, crying their eyes out. And I so desperately wanted to reach out. And so I shared on Instagram, I shared a picture that I took in the hospital, and here's my story. And I had floods of strangers message me, comment, wow, thank you for sharing. I went through this too. Your experience is a lot like mine. And all of a sudden it was this whole door to a community that I didn't know existed. And there was instant amount of, sisterhood and support. Um, and even though I was sitting on the couch eating chocolate pudding with my curtains closed, I felt connected. And so it was really that moment where I decided, okay, I have to do something with my story. And um, I really believe that my babies led me to my ultimate purpose, which is fertility coaching. And so I went to life coach training with Beautiful You Academy in Australia. It was virtual, but they're based in Australia, and graduated earlier this year. And I've just been advocating for all of us in this community, and really helping to bring light to this space, bring hope to this space, and healing, because that's ultimately like what we're all searching for and what we all need.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. It's so touching, and I think it's so true that not everybody, obviously, but the majority of women and men, actually, I know male fertility coaches as well, come into this because of what they've been through. And
Mm.
I think it's the same for me. It's like, I feel like I went through all that shit so that I could help others come through their shit. And
Yeah.
it's so, I think it's such, like you said, it's having that. I did the same. I trained while I was still going through infertility.
Mhm.
And it was for me, and a lot of people, like my friends, were kind of saying to me, it's like, are you sure you want to be doing this a bit close to home? But I found it so healing myself. Do you find it the same?
Absolutely. I mean, every time I get to connect with someone and have them share their story, help them through, you know, the most craziest rocky time of their life, most likely, it heals me and it helps me. And each time I have a Reiki session, like I feel healed as well from that session. And so, absolutely, girlfriend. I feel like our babies have led us to a purpose. The trauma we've gone through have led us to helping others through their trauma. And it's, you know, um, I hate the phrase, everything happens for a reason. And yet 4 years after the fact, I understand that reason. And although I would much rather have my babies here, and I'm still, not a mother yet. I'm still, working through my infertility process. Um, but it is that much sweeter because of the community that we are building, and how people are being so brave and so strong and reaching out and just sharing their story it gives me so much, smiles and good chills.
I think there's definitely something about sharing, because you feel like it's only you. You feel like it's, especially if you've got no friends or no family who've been through it, you
Mm.
feel like you're so isolated. And then you meet someone else, and then you meet someone else. And I think the thing for me, it was meeting other women that looked and sounded like me. Sounds really weird, but I sort of had in my head that it was sort of, I don't know, a lot older women, or a lot, I don't know. I I just kind of thought it was like, it's not people like me. And then I went to a fertility support meeting and literally walked in, and I was like, everyone else looks like they're 12 as well. Like, I wasn't 12 obviously when I was going through it, but I looked so young that all like the fertility doctors and things kind of would just go, oh, you're fine. And I'd be like, look at my age, like, look. And then they kind of go, oh, right, oh, okay, yeah, we should be thinking about this. But because I looked really young, it's like I didn't have
Yeah.
that, the clock sticking thing until they kind of checked my notes. And it was, yeah, just, and that's the beauty of Instagram, is that it's like back in the day when I was going through it, was infertility forums. So you didn't have the photos of people, you didn't have people's real names. It was like infertile 77, got no eggs 21, and you'd be kind of chatting to people, and you'd be like, it could be anyone. It could be just like this weird, pervert on there just saying stuff, whatever. So like,
Yeah.
joy of Instagram is that you can, and you get to meet people and really know them as well, which is So lovely. Okay, so tell us what Reiki is. So if people have never heard of Reiki, what is it and what does it do?
Okay, Reiki is essentially it's a ancient Japanese tradition or technique, excuse me, for stress relief and relaxation. So it is all about promoting healing. So Rei in Japanese means spiritual, and Ki, which is Ki, means life energy. So in essence, Reiki is spiritual life energy. Um, it has as energy, it has no physical restraints, physical boundaries. It does flow through time and space, as that sounds a little woo woo. But I first heard of Reiki through like a friend of a friend, and they were like, "You should try it," and I was like, "That sounds crazy. How could that possibly work?" And as I went through my second loss and I was in such a deep dark hole, I was like, I will try anything because I need help. And I went to a local Reiki practitioner and had my first session and went in with a very, open mind of like, I hope this helps. And I was blown away at how amazing I felt afterwards. So essentially, because Reiki is life energy that flows through all living things, when you get a treatment, which is where the practitioner hovers hands either over the body or lays hands on top of your body, like around your head, your heart center, and you're fully clothed. It's not like a massage where you go in all naked. Uh, and so you're fully clothed, laying on a massage table, and I did an hour-long session, and I felt like a physical brick had been taken off and removed from my chest. For the first time since my loss, I felt like I could breathe again. And so I was instantly like, what is this? And I'm amazed. And that's when I like dove all into, the research, and I really became a strong believer. And then I ultimately became a practitioner because I love the work so much. And it essentially it's energy work. So we all have an energy field around us. We have our aura, as if most people have heard of the aura. And we have our chakras, which are 7 energy fields within our body. And so what the Reiki energy does is, as it's being transmitted through the practitioner, it flows through every area of your energy field. And it helps to remove blockages caused by trauma, stress, heartache, because all of that sits within our body somewhere. We all hold stress, we all hold trauma and grief within our body in some form or fashion, whether we realize it or not. And so when you receive Reiki healing, that Reiki, just imagine it as like a river that just like flows through, and it just picks up all the little things that are stuck and helps it just flow through so that you are aligned. Your energy field is not blocked, and you go from this like gray cloud to this like bright sunshine. And it feels like a warm hug. So you can physically feel the heat from the practitioner's hands as they're moving throughout your body. And the greatest thing that I have found is that because Reiki has no physical boundaries, is that you can do distance Reiki healing. So like right here, right now, I could send you Reiki energy, and you would be able to feel that working through your body, which is, so great and so amazing.
And which is so amazing as well at the moment that with social distancing and us all not being able to have that connection, the joy of being able to do things that you can still connect very deeply, even if you can't be in the same room with someone.
Yeah. Yes. And I think that connection more than ever, like we're craving right now, because we're stuck at home and we're not seeing our friends, and we're doing a lot of this, Zoom chatting. Um, and so to be able to receive healing in a way that you can't go out and um, you can't go out and get a massage right now, although we all would like to, or get a mani-pedi, which can sometimes just lift our spirits, right? But the Reiki energy, it's true deep healing, and it touches areas within our energy field that we don't realize that we probably have blockages there. So for a lot of women who are trying to conceive, stress can be a huge part of why you're not getting pregnant, while there can be a lot of other reasons, right? Medically and physically, stress plays a big role in it. And so to be able to receive that Reiki healing and help lift that stress off of your body can be huge and make a big difference in the process of trying to get pregnant and going through infertility treatments.
I think that's the beauty as well of a healing treatment where you're receiving. Because I think sometimes people get very scared about coming like to therapy, or coming to coaching, because of inevitably turning and facing the things that are big and huge and scary that we have pushed deep down inside, and we're trying so hard every day to just keep it in there.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes there's, actually, let's speak to that first. I think sometimes people think that coming to working with a fertility coach is going to be kind of opening that door and all the grief, and it's just going to come out and it's going to be completely swamped you. But it doesn't have to be like that. And the joy, I think Reiki takes it to that next level again, that you can, and I've had one of my friends is a Reiki practitioner, and the sessions of, it's when you're really like, you just like, you want to just be embraced, you want, just that, like that hug, you just want someone to just hold you, and you are totally just receiving. Is so beautiful. So if someone, it really is at the stage where they're like, what I've been through is too much even to consider opening that door yet, I can't, like, it's just too much. I think this is definitely where Reiki would be this beautiful healing modality that they can just go, just let it in, just receive. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I love the way you put that and you said that, because you need nothing to receive Reiki. The only thing that I ask of my clients is that they have an open mind and that they are open to receiving. And if you have that, then you you don't have to do anything else but lie down in a comfy position. And I have a little Spotify playlist that helps because it is infused with Reiki, and it just helps with the relaxation. So all you have to do is really lie there and say, I'm open to receiving. And if you have a intention that you want to focus on while you're receiving the Reiki, I always say that that's helpful. A lot of my clients they fall asleep sometimes because they're just so relaxed, which is really fun over Zoom, because when I'm done, I'm like, okay, we're done. And they're like snoring. And it takes a minute, and then, they come, they're like, oh, wow, I didn't even realize I was asleep. So, and that really shows like how relaxing this is you just open up and say, I'm open to receiving what the Reiki energy can give me, and Reiki does the rest.
I think that's the joy, isn't it? It's like, because sometimes your body sleeps because that's what it needs to kind of really release as well. So I find that as well with doing, like, obviously being a hypnotherapist, that if I was doing like a session, in the room with someone, at the end, I'd raise my voice, and the different way you'd, very gently sort of place a hand on their arm and go, it's the end of the session now, Whereas obviously on Zoom, you're like, Alice, wake up! Like, and it kind of breaks the like peaceful.
Yeah, I just gently am like, we're done. And then if it goes on a little longer, then I kind of, turn the music off, and then, hello,
Are you still there?
Yeah. But it really is just such a nurturing experience. It's the ultimate act of self-care when you need it. Because I think for us to sit down for 30 minutes to an hour with no other plans, and to really give ourselves that time. It takes a commitment to ourselves that sometimes we're not willing to do. And we know, like, when we're quiet, what happens? The mind just tends to go wild. And with that Reiki healing, it can help really kind of ease all that stress within your mind. And when you're focusing on your breath and you come into your body, just something really miraculous things start to happen. And I just find that Reiki has honestly changed my life, which is why I now I'm a practitioner to help other people witness that.
And how can you use, is Reiki something, is it something people can do themselves? Is there any kind of positions you could hold yourselves? I know one of your images is really beautiful. When it was in your meditation you did last week, and you said about putting rubbing your hands and then putting both. Could you talk us through that? Is that like something people could do for themselves?
Yeah. So to be a Reiki practitioner and give to others, you do have to be attuned to the energy. So you do have to go to a Reiki master, and they actually attune your energy field. And so it's like an up level, in other words. But to do it yourself, you can feel the Reiki energy around you. One thing that I say is to rub your hands together. You feel that friction. You feel that warmth coming into your hands. And then when you place that on your heart center, and you feel that warmth within your chest, and as you like take a deep breath and you exhale, you can feel that energy around you. And it's just like, the little things around you. Maybe it's the air touching your shoulders or your nose. And so that's really what I say is the way that, if you're interested, if can you feel your aura, can you feel your energy field, is to do that type of practice. But in order to really harness the power of Reiki, you do have to be attuned by a master who just changes the like DNA of your energy field, essentially, to be able to receive and to give.
Fantastic. And so how can you use Reiki? So you said that sometimes they can have energy blocks. So what different ways have you maybe got examples of on how you've worked with clients?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that. So I do a lot of womb healing with Reiki. That's where a lot of my focus is, particularly because so much trauma is held in our sacral chakra, which is the chakra of our womb space. It holds our creativity, and it holds our, our self-worth. And then you add on the trauma of infertility, of pregnancy loss, and it can just really hold a lot of negative energy there. And so I do a lot of womb healing, which is where we focus a lot on our sessions on clearing that womb space, inviting nurturing warmth into that space. And ultimately, I work with women who are in the IVF cycle. So I have a package that coordinates with your IVF steps. And so we start on like cycle day 1, and then we move into when you're doing the shots. And so you have 2 Reiki sessions while you're doing shots. And then we do a Reiki session on retrieval day, before and after. And what this really helps with is a lot of stress of like, oh my God, it's retrieval day. What's going to happen? How many eggs am I going to finally collect? And are my eggs going to be good? And so we really, it helps kind of relieve that stress. It also promotes embryo health, which is something that I love. And just feel like it's what I like to offer to people. And then coordinating with that, we do on transfer day, and then the 2-week wait. You'll have 2 sessions in there. And an option that I always like to offer, which some people take and some people don't, is to partner Reiki, where it's essentially like couples Reiki, and you both lie down and receive the energy together. Because I think kind of what we said in the beginning is a lot of times the men in the situation don't get talked about enough.
People forget that it takes 2 people. It takes 2.
Yeah. And we do focus so much on women because we are going through the brute, right? We're going through the most work. But like my husband, he just sits back and is like so anxious and so worried about everything I'm going through. And so I love to offer that couples Reiki, to really help both partners in the relationship. And it's a beautiful experience. There's not a lot of research with success as far as helping embryo health. It's something that I would love to connect with a fertility specialist and do
Yeah.
like a clinical study with Reiki and fertility one day. If whoever's listening, if
Put that, put that intention out there. There we
put
go.
it out there,
Next
exactly.
12 months.
Exactly. Because I just want to prove what I really believe. The only study I've been able to find is out of Spain. And it really showed the effects with Reiki on um, not necessarily embryo health, but the health of the mother throughout the IVF process. So that was a really beautiful study. It was only put out about a year ago, but there needs to be more. There needs to be more of this. And Reiki is now being integrated more into hospitals, particularly with cancer care. And so, to me, I'm like, well, Reiki can help with cancer and it can help with all these physical ailments that it has been proven to help with. We just need some more research to prove that it is helpful with IVF treatment as well.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, I imagine that in another, 5 years, 10 years, we'll have so many more studies and people will look back and go, well, of course you do your energy work when you're going for infertility or cancer, whatever. Whereas at the minute, it's very much, you start off and you may be going down the medical route and putting the sort of the healing and the energy alongside it, or maybe you want to avoid the medical route, especially if you've got unexplained infertility where there's no reason why you should need to go through IVF, but they've run out of other things to get you to do, so they're like, on to IVF then. And it was like for me, I went through 2 rounds of IUI and 2 rounds of IVF and then got pregnant naturally twice afterwards. And it was like, well, why I went through infertility because they were like, the clock ticking, you've got endometriosis. It was that whole thing of like, I needed to get pregnant before the endometriosis got too bad and I needed another laparoscopy. So it's this whole kind of, because they didn't really know why it wasn't happening, IVF was the route. They're like, that, you do IUI, that's not working, let's do IVF.
Yeah.
But it's like, the more and more studies show that when we obviously, we're all energy, that is what we are. And so now as they're learning more and more about how we can, how our energy is affected by our thoughts, by our body, by our health, by our ancestors' health, I think that's that whole kind of the things that are passed down as well is so fascinating, because I'm finding that there are more and more studies that are now coming out with emotional freedom technique, which is the MD technique I use. And every time you're like, yes, I knew this, but it's great to have it written down. You know what it is? Like, inside, because you felt the transformation. Like you said, you had that Reiki session and you were like, I feel how powerful this has been for me. I did the same with EFT. I literally was like, read it in a book and I was like, oh my God, that sounds ridiculous. But I was doing herbs, I was doing the acupuncture, I was doing all the things. And then this book was like, tap on your body, tap on your face and say this. And I was like, oh my God. But I did it and I felt amazing. And I was like, ooh. And because it's linked to, and I think it's the thing as well, because now I'd say like the vast majority of people are quite open to acupuncture. Like you say, you're having acupuncture for fertility and people are kind of like, yeah, of course. Why would you not? And it's like, acupuncture is working on your energy with a traditional Chinese meridians. And then you're like, and then EFT and Reiki and all these different energy types use the same energy system. But because it's like acupuncture is kind of like, it's just acceptable now, isn't it? But hopefully, maybe we can speed it up. In a year's time, everyone will be like, oh, and what energy modality are you using for your fertility support? And be like, it's this.
That is the dream, right? I mean, that is the dream. Like now that I'm in this world of, I'm fully in it, and I'm now I'm speaking, and I'm, bringing awareness to your energy field. And now that I'm in it, it's so normal for me. And then like I'll talk to somebody, and they'll be like, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, well, I'm a Reiki practitioner and a fertility coach. And they're like, oh, does that work? So then I'm like, yes, let me tell you all about the things, but because we maybe are in this world where we have begun to step away, we step into the woo woo is what I like to say,
Yeah.
like just give into it. And so to be able to have that be normal is a dream. And at one point, acupuncture and fertility and IVF was thought as abnormal, and now we're in this thing now where it's like it helps so much. So that's where I hope we can be with Reiki in a few years' time.
And I think definitely at the stage at the minute where, like, here in the UK, we're back in lockdown. And so
Mhm.
if there are things like EFT and Reiki that people can be doing when they can't be going for acupuncture at the minute, they can't be seeing, obviously, most people can see people on Zoom, but maybe there are things that they can't physically be doing. Like at one stage I was having womb massage, Mayan massage sessions, which are just so beautiful. But obviously
Yeah,
stuff like that at the minute you can't do. So it's
right.
really nice to be able to let people know that there are these really powerful things that, even though I think there's that whole thing of people are like, oh, acupuncture or massage are more powerful because it's physical. But
Mhm.
that's when we're forgetting that our bodies, we are physical, we are emotional, we are energy. And combining all of these, this is when it gets really interesting, isn't it? Because
Mhm.
especially when there's no physical reason why you are just like, yeah, how does that work? Or there is, like you said, like we store trauma in our bodies. So this is what's so powerful. So I had a session with one of my clients, and we were doing EFT, energy release, and we were tapping around and talking about a particular scenario. And then she felt this release in her stomach, in her womb, and her hips. And she
Mhm.
said she had felt tense in that area for years, not just during the fertility journey, but for years, to the point of she thought that was normal. She thought that's just what wombs and hips felt like when
Mm,
you're in the
wow.
30s. It's like that's how your body is. And it was only with the release of that she was like, something has changed. And this was, a Zoom session. She's tapping on her, she's following around the language I'm saying, but there was that physical release from doing something, in your head, in your words, using language. And it just absolutely fascinates me.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and I think that's so awesome that your client had that experience and then was able to have such a drastic contrast afterwards to say, I physically felt that release. And I just love that. I was working with a client recently, who and oftentimes when I do Reiki, sometimes I do see images, and it's like my intuition is coming
Oh,
alive.
yeah.
And at this point, we'd worked on each other. I had worked on her about 4 or 5 times, and we were helping her through her IVF cycle. She was about to have her egg retrieval, like 2 or 3 days before her egg retrieval, and I kept seeing like an ancient Mayan woman, and I, was like,
Yeah.
okay, that's weird, and also and also, is it my imagination? Sometimes you do question your intuition, and I'm still learning and still leaning into my intuition. But at this point, this Mayan woman had shown up so many times, and so finally, I had asked her, you know, I just feel like I need to talk about this, and I
Yeah.
keep seeing this Mayan woman, and does that ring anything to you? And maybe it doesn't. And she was like, actually, she had met with a hypnotherapist who had done past life regression with her,
Yeah.
and this Mayan woman had come up, and she had lost a child in a past life, or in like an ancestral connection. And her hypnotherapist thought at the time that ancestor had made a pact that she would never get pregnant again,
Oh.
and that she would not go through this loss again. And she also had unexplained infertility. And so it was interesting that we talked about that and that came up. And then as we move forward in her healing, Reiki healing, is I really focused on connecting with that ancestor and helping her release her trauma. And as this gets into like the extreme, you know, believe what you will, but for her, as soon as we brought this ancestor into the healing intentionally, she felt a connection with her and then had her release herself from, you know, her physical body. And it's so cool. And like, this just happened like about a week or two ago, and so she hasn't had her transfer yet. But I'm, you know, I'm really interested to follow along and see, you know, how her journey plays out, knowing that she did have this ancestor come up with a, you know, almost like a life pact or whatnot. So.
Oh, and it's so powerful, isn't it? Because even if somebody is listening to this and like maybe they're faith, or maybe they're just like, I don't believe in past life, full stop. Right. You can look at it that our mind works in metaphor. Our mind tells us things and teaches things like through dreams, through you know, day hallucinations, through this type of healing. So in meditation, for example, people can have these really strong feelings. So even if someone couldn't be on board with, oh, okay, it wasn't past life, it could be that your subconscious mind has made a pact with itself that from stories they've heard or from their own imagination, the idea of getting pregnant and having a loss is too scary. Therefore, they've made a pact with themselves. I'm not going to go there. And I really feel that we're so much more powerful than we would ever believe. Yes. And so I think there are so many things that can come out. I think this is why it's so beautiful, specifically working with someone who not just is trained specifically in fertility, but has been there or is still going through it. Because I think if you haven't been through it, you can't understand the depth of how this impacts you to like your absolute core. Yeah. And I think if you're working with someone who hasn't ever experienced that, they might, you know, they may have experienced other things in their life that are very traumatic or trying, but for someone to have actually been through, it's never just about, I really like to have a baby, that'd be great. It's about your identity, and it's about who you thought you're going to be, who you are with your partner, who your partner is, what your life looks like, what you do in your life, like how you spend your time. Everything is tied up in this desire to become a parent. And then when that's not happening, it makes you question everything. And the more loss you've experienced, it can get to the stage that people can come to this stage of desperately wanting to be pregnant, but being desperately petrified of actually getting pregnant. Yes. And yeah. Do you find that as well?
Absolutely. And I mean, I've seen it in my own life of, you know, I was at a point where I had to make a decision. Do we do IVF or you know, is motherhood right for me? And at that point I was stuck. I was physically stuck of saying, I'm scared of going through IVF because I personally try not to do a lot of medicine. I try to do more like holistic health for myself. And, you know, IVF is straight up the opposite, right? And so I was scared of that. And I was scared of also not being, never being a mother. And I was literally frozen for months in not taking any action. So I've seen that in my own life of the fear of the success of pregnancy, the fear of maybe a failure again, and also the, just like, what do I do? I don't want to make a decision, and or maybe I do, but I make the right decision, and then we just go back and forth. And I've seen it in my own life where to really connect with my body, to come in inward and truly release that fear, release those concrete feet that are causing me to not move forward. And I have found within my own life, the more I come in, I connect with my body, the more I release the negativity within my mind, the more I feel great. And I'm able to then make that next baby step to a decision, make that next step to research. And whatever those little steps look like, they add up to big steps, which is, ultimately, all right, we're doing IVF in a month, or whatever that step is for you. So absolutely, I believe we can be our own worst enemy, and we could also be our own best friend. And it takes a lot of work to be our best friend, but it is worth it. It is so worth it.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I think that's the power of it, isn't it? It's like there are so many tiny things and tiny decisions you can make all day long to send you either, down spiraling into negativity and depression, or just keep moving you forward.
Mhm.
So what's your number one tip for the people listening? Maybe what's the number one thing that you could wish you could just like ring up every single person going through Tinder, go, this is what you need to know?
Oh, number one. I think ultimately it's be your own advocate. You know your body, whether you are intentionally aware right now of what's going on or what's not. And so as you're moving forward with your fertility process, and you're trying to conceive, and whatever that may look like for you, being your own advocate is the biggest thing I can recommend. And particularly being in connection with your body so that you can be your advocate easier. And so being in connection with your body looks like, having that quiet time, that meditation. It's attending what gives you the most joy throughout your day. And really, our bodies are so aware, and we don't give them enough credit for how much knowledge we hold within our skin. And so when you go forward into these fertility treatments, and you're going to the doctor, and they're telling you you had an ectopic pregnancy, you need to wait a whole year, and that whole year you're like, this doesn't feel right, which is what happened to me, but I listened. And instead, my gut that whole year was saying, you need to get your next tube tested. And so I listened to the doctor and not myself. And that is why I say be your own advocate, because I knew that I needed my last tube tested within my body, and I didn't have the courage at that moment to release and speak up about that, which is what I have learned throughout my process now. And that's why I say, like, we have so much knowledge within our body. If an idea passes through your head, it's not random. Most likely, it does flow to us for a reason. And so go out there and use your voice, speak your mind, and be so powerfully connected to yourself to where you feel comfortable saying, I think this isn't right, or I want to do this. What do you think about this? Could you tell me more about this? Whatever you're curious about, follow that curiosity.
Oh, that's so powerful. I think that's also one of the things that working with a fertility coach can really, really help, because if you've lost all your confidence, as many people do through infertility, by having someone who is there, like completely on your side, can sometimes help be that link between you and your doctor. So that's something that I work on quite a lot with clients, is like, your next appointment's coming up. What's your intention?
Mhm.
What questions are you going to ask? Let's write them down. Always, I'd say, whenever you're going to any appointment, set your intention at the start. What do you want to get out of this appointment? What information do you want? Write down your questions, because when you go in there, you quite likely might just go blah, 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 and complete, and then you come out and you're like, I've waited 6 months for this appointment. I completely forgot to ask the main question that I was supposed to ask.
Yeah.
Down. But this can be something that working with a coach can help coach you through how to get the best out of your fertility team, especially if you've maybe got a specialist who is like, oh yes, we're going to do this, blah blah blah, and you're like, well, actually that doesn't feel right with
Mhm.
me. And sometimes that is good. You have fears of treatment or going into a process, and it's actually addressing the fears, but there's also making sure you're working with people that you feel. So one of my clients at the minute was put off treatment for a year because she really felt like she couldn't move forward.
Mhm.
And actually the root of that she felt, she kind of made this pact with herself when she was younger that she wouldn't ask for help. She was like, I don't need to ask for help, I don't need help. And she was so kind of living that, even asking for physical help with the fertility journey felt like that. Once we broke that down and found that and dissolved it, then it was like, oh yeah, I can ask for help. I don't need to take I don't need to go in and say, help me, and they go do IVF. You can go in and go, okay, you're going to do clothing for 6 months. And she's like, oh, okay. Yeah, I can do that. It was like, instead of, it doesn't need to be this like black and white,
Yeah.
Fantastic. So how can people get in touch with you and find out more about you?
Okay, you can find me at xojennijune.com. So it's X as in xylophone, O as in octopus, and then Jenni, Jenni, June, June.com. And I'm also on Instagram, xojennijune, as well as, pop up on Pinterest every now and then. And I have a Facebook page as well, which is XO Jenni June Coaching.
Fantastic. And do you have a freebie or anything you would like to offer to listeners?
Yes, absolutely. So I have a couple freebies on my page. I have some recorded meditations that help you throughout whichever process you are in. So it could be earlier. I've gone through a loss meditation, or I'm about to go through fertility treatment. There's meditations that you can access through my website. And then I also offer a free consultation for either a Reiki package or coaching package. So you can always reach out. That is available anytime. I love to connect with people. Like we said in the beginning, I love hearing people's stories. It's what makes my heart pitter patter. And so definitely reach out if you're interested in knowing more about Reiki.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on today. It's so lovely to hear your story and your pearls of wisdom. And yes, I will put.
Thank you for having me. This was absolutely wonderful. And I love, this was the best way to wake up this morning, is to come on and chat with you right away.
Fantastic. I will put all of your contact details in both the show notes, and if you're watching us on YouTube, they will all be underneath. So definitely hop over and follow, subscribe, and share the love. If you've enjoyed this episode, then please do share. You could, if you're in Instagram, then you could do a screenshot of the podcast or the episodes, sharing your stories. Make sure to tag both of us, and just anyone who might find this slightly interesting, let them know, because we're doing this to spread the word. We're doing this because we're really passionate about as many people as possible knowing that, if just one person listens and goes, oh, I've just got a feeling that maybe I should get this checked out, and they go and they do it, then this hour has been so worth it, because that might be the thing. It might be the thing that you need to just sort, and then that's the thing. It's just so, listen to your body is so important. It's got so much to share with you. Thank you, Jenni. This has been amazing.
Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm.